All right. Let's dive into some C++ today.
Sounds good to me.
We're taking a look at this set of slides from what seems like a larger C++ course.
Okay.
It's all in Spanish.
Really?
Yeah, thankfully the code is in English or we'd really be in trouble.
Yeah, that would be rough.
Yeah, but it's fascinating to get a glimpse of how this stuff is taught globally.
Yeah, for sure.
And today's focus is a design pattern that's a bit of a loner, the singleton.
It's a great way to think about it. The singleton pattern is all about ensuring only one instance of a class exists in your entire program. Imagine a lone figure meditating peacefully in the middle of a crowded pool.
Okay.
That's your singleton, completely unique.
That's a great visual. And these slides kind of dive right into the deep end, defining the singleton as this exclusive club with just one member.
Right.
It's about making sure that if you need, say, global settings for your app, you're not creating multiple conflicting versions all over the place.
Exactly. Imagine the chaos if each part of your app had its own idea of what the correct settings were.
Right.
A singleton prevents that by providing a single central point of access.
Okay.
And what's key here is this static keyword.
Okay.
This isn't just about a single instance existing at a time.
Yeah.
It's about that instance being tied to the class itself, living on throughout the program's entire life cycle.
Okay, so it's like having a designated spot in the memory bank for this one very important object.
Precisely. Now, the slide breaks down how this actually works in practice.
Okay.
Think of it like a recipe. First ingredient, a private constructor.
So you can't just whip up a new instance on a whim from anywhere in the code.
Exactly.
Like the only way into this exclusive club is through a secret entrance.
Exactly. And that's where the second ingredient comes in. The static instance method.
Yeah.
Often named something like getInstance. This method acts as the gatekeeper.
Okay.
It checks if an instance of the singleton already exists.
Right.
If it does, great. It hands you the key to the club.
Okay.
If not, it creates the instance itself before giving you access.
So no matter how many times you ask for the singleton, you're always getting the same original instance.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And to store that precious instance, we need our final ingredient, a static instance variable which lives within the class itself.
So it's like the singleton class is saying, I've got this special object, you can use it, but only on my terms.
Precisely. It's all about controlled access and ensuring that only one entity calls the shots.
It's like having a dedicated hotline to a global service desk.
Right.
No matter which department you're calling from, you're always connected to the same team.
That's a great way to put it. And the beauty of this getInstance method is its elegance.
Right.
It checks if an instance exists, and if so, delivers it.
Right.
If not, it creates one, ensuring you always have that single point of access.
And the slides give us a really concrete example of this with the Register Actividad class.
Yeah.
Walk us through how to use a singleton to manage an activity log.
What's really neat is that even though the example code appears to create two instances of Register Actividad, they both ultimately point back to the same underlying instance.
Okay.
Because of that getInstance method.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this right, it's like having two different doors that lead to the same room.
Okay.
You might enter from different places, but you end up in the same spot.
You got it. And think about how useful that is for something like an activity log.
Yeah.
No matter where in your application something happens,
Right.
you can tell the Register Actividad singleton to make a note of it, and it'll be reflected consistently.
It's like having a single authoritative record keeper for your entire application. No more trying to piece together information from different sources.
Now, the slides make an interesting point here.
Okay.
They say that singletons can be great for things like managing database connections,
Okay.
ensuring only one connection is open at a time.
Right.
But they also caution against overusing them.
Because as much as we love a good singleton, they aren't always the perfect solution.
Right.
Right.
One thing they highlight is that singletons can make testing a bit tricky.
Because they're global, right.
Exactly.
So it's hard to isolate them when you're trying to test a specific part of your code?
Imagine trying to test a single cog in a complex machine.
Oh, okay.
If that cog is connected to a central lever that affects the entire machine, your singleton,
Right.
it becomes really difficult to figure out if a problem is due to the cog itself or because of how that central lever is behaving.
So you're saying that singletons can make your tests kind of brittle?
Yeah.
Where they break easily, even when the problem isn't directly related to the code you're testing?
And it's not just testing. Relying too heavily on singletons can also lead to tightly coupled code,
Okay.
which is a fancy way of saying that different parts of your program become overly dependent on each other.
It's like building a house where all the rooms are connected with no doors.
Right.
It might seem efficient at first,
Sure.
but if you ever need to make changes, you're in trouble.
Precisely. And that can make maintaining and updating your code much harder in the long run.
Yeah.
Imagine needing to rewire one room in that house.
Right.
You end up having to rewire the entire building because everything is so interconnected.
So while singletons can be incredibly useful for things like global settings, managing resources, or centralizing certain functions, we need to be mindful of their limitations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about finding the right balance.
Right.
Now, the slides touch on a really interesting point. They mention that sometimes you might need a slightly modified version of the singleton pattern.
Oh, like when?
Well, imagine you're building a multiplayer game,
Okay.
and you need a limited number of game managers.
Okay.
Say one for each game server.
Okay.
A classic singleton wouldn't work because you need more than one instance.
So how would you handle that?
That's where the multi-ton pattern comes in.
Okay.
It's like a singleton, but instead of allowing just one instance,
Right.
it lets you have a predetermined number, each responsible for a specific part of your system.
Ah, so instead of a single, all-powerful entity, you have a small council, each member with their own area of expertise.
Exactly. It's all about adapting these patterns to fit your specific needs.
So it's like having different singleton subcommittees.
Right.
Each managing their own little part of the world.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It sounds like mastering design patterns like this is about understanding the core concepts and then being able to adapt them to different situations.
Precisely. It's not about memorizing code.
Right.
It's about having a toolkit of solutions.
Right.
And knowing when and how to apply them effectively.
And the singleton, despite its potential pitfalls,
Yeah.
definitely has its place in that toolkit.
For sure.
It's fascinating how something so conceptually simple can be so powerful.
Absolutely. Remember, at its core, the singleton pattern is about ensuring that a class has only one instance.
Right.
And providing a global point of access to it.
Right, like that lone figure meditating in the pool.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, that visual really got me thinking.
Okay.
What if instead of just one figure, there was a small, exclusive group allowed in that central area?
You're thinking about what we just discussed.
Yeah.
The multi-ton pattern, right?
Exactly. It's like we're modifying the analogy on the fly.
I love it.
Instead of one lone wolf, we've got a pack.
Right.
Each with their own responsibilities.
Right.
But still operating under the umbrella of that singleton concept.
I love how you're connecting the dots. It really highlights how design patterns can be adapted
Yeah.
and even combined to solve specific problems.
It's like having a base recipe
Right.
that you can tweak to create all sorts of different flavors.
Yeah, you're making me hungry. But yes.
Yeah.
That's a great way to think about it.
So to wrap things up, it seems like the singleton pattern, while not a silver bullet,
Right.
is a valuable tool for any developer's arsenal.
Absolutely. And more importantly, we've equipped you with the knowledge to recognize when a singleton is the right tool for the job.
Right.
And crucially, when it might be time to consider other options.
We've gone from that lone figure in the pool to a whole team of singletons, and even explored their multifaceted cousins, the multi-tons.
I know, it's crazy.
Who knew a deep dive into one design pattern could be so expansive?
That's the beauty of it. There's always more to learn.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
It was great chatting with you.
Same here. Until next time.